As far as another team goes, the Houston Texans dealing with some injuries. Tank Dell was out last week. Joe Mixon was out. He's been out now for a couple of weeks, and we saw the really strong start from Joe Mixon. But he's out again this week. And this high ankle that was supposed to be a mild high ankle, medial high ankle, whatever, or medial ankle, excuse me, whatever it was, it's turned out to be a lot more troublesome than we thought. And he's been missing games. He's been in limited practice. Like last week, he was limited in practice. And obviously he was like a game time decision. But now he's ruled out like beforehand. So it seems like the Texans are trying to give him extra time to recover. I really like Joe Mixon too as a player, and he's been pretty durable in the past. So it's surprising that he's been out this long. But with the injury, it's understandable. And typically high ankles, we've talked about this, high ankles are anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks and oftentimes offer lingering effects. Yeah. So as somebody who is invested in Joe Mixon, I am slightly concerned right now that he hasn't returned, and I'm slightly concerned that his value moving forward might be like a little bit of a timeshare. The saving grace is that nobody has really played well. Dameon Pierce hasn't been available. Cam Akers hasn't really looked the part. What are you doing with Joe Mixon right now? Because he's a tough player to gauge. Like, I want to trade for him, but I also know that high ankles can be lingering throughout the season.
Yeah, it's a concern just because, like you said, with the high ankles, we always see these guys. I mean, even like you can say Tony Pollard last year was affected from that high ankle. He had to get surgery for the tightrope surgery he had, but he had that high ankle sprain the year prior. So like these kind of things just like it kind of zaps their explosiveness a little bit. So there, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of concern, but the thing is, at least with Joe Mixon, like you said, is these guys haven't really separated themselves, and this is a good offense that should be in plenty of scoring opportunities. So he should be able to see, you know, a good amount of red zone touches, goal line touches. So I would just continue to hold on to him. He's not somebody I would try to sell. But like I would say this is a little bit concerning too for like Jonathan Taylor, because a lot of people think that like people thought he was actually going to play this week, and like he's probably going to miss multiple weeks here, maybe 3. Like, and so if you had Jonathan Taylor too, like this is just anytime when you hear high ankle sprain for running backs, like you said, these guys usually miss like on average, it's like 3 to 4 weeks. So yeah, it's concerning, but he should be coming. I don't know when their bye is, but he should be coming back soon. I would say Joe Mixon.
Yeah, it seems like unless they have a bye that's coming, I want to say they have like a week, like 12 bye. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but when it comes to, or maybe 14, it's either 14 or 12, and they have a later bye. But when it comes to Joe Mixon, man, it's like, you know, we've seen him play through injuries. It's a good thing because he's not like this explosive back. He is more of kind of a volume back. So I'm not assuming like we need to bench him when he comes back. It's just, when is he going to be back, and is this thing lingering more than they thought? So it's tough, man, because when you look at this Houston Texans team, you also see another guy in Tank Dell, we can talk about Tank Dell, but I want to get to the other running backs real quick. There's going to be, we talked about like not having opportunity here. Cam Akers has had a bunch of opportunity to take over this starting role. He just hasn't, you could tell like he hasn't looked the same. There's been times where he looks explosive, and then it's kind of proven like maybe he's not the best one to have all these touches. Where are you at with Cam Akers replacing Joe Mixon? Because to me, he's had some tough matchups too. Like, I think that's a little bit of it.
So I will say this. Dameon Pierce returned to practice today. So I don't know if Dameon Pierce is going to kind of, because the one guy that I feel, if I had to start one from this backfield, it would honestly be Dare. And the reason why is just because he's dominating the pass catching snaps. And even when Joe Mixon was there, he was playing, he was seeing pass catching. I want to look this up real quick. So week 1, when Joe Mixon was there, Dare was still playing 34% of the passing down snaps. The Joe Mixon's 55. And the past 2 weeks, this past week, he played 52% of the passing down snaps, and even saw red zone touches as well. He saw 3 red zone touches to Cam Akers 3. So like, for me personally, majority of leagues are PPR leagues. And so I'd rather have Dare just in case, like they play Buffalo, right?
Yeah, they're going against Buffalo this week.
So they could potentially be behind. And that was the problem with Cam Akers week 1 too. Thankfully, he had that touchdown reception. But like he didn't play that much just because this team was playing from behind. So Dare was on the field a lot more than, or I don't want to say a lot more, but was on the field more than he was, just because that pass catching role. And then the other thing is, like, if Dameon Pierce does come back this week, does now that mean that like He's kind of the guy. I just feel the safest with Dare because I think he's this team's pass catching back. Without Joe Mixon, like he's the preferred guy there. So I like that role.
It kind of reminds me of like the Chief situation where like he's valuable but maybe not startable. Is tough, and I think Cam Akers is kind of like is kind of like Steele, right? Carson Steele, where he's not really that good enough to be like your guy, but it's like you can see upside in the offense because it's a good offense. So if Dameon Pierce does come back and is the starter or is some part of this backfield, it brings kind of the situation where I wouldn't want to start any of these guys, even in a plus matchup. The Bills have been the worst team against running backs so far this season. It still wouldn't be a matchup that I'd want to start any of these guys, to be honest with you. And it's a tough back.
What if you had to start one?
If I had to start one, I'm going Cam Akers for the floor. It was kind of like the same thing as Carson Steele. It's just a guaranteed workload potential at the score. I think that's the part that, for me, is intriguing. It's not that I think he's been good by any means, but I know he's had some tougher matchups in that this is a plus matchup for him on paper. So I would – if Dameon Pierce doesn't play, I'm starting Cam Akers. If Dameon Pierce does play, I think he's more of a flex and a risky flex at that. That's what I'm
at. Who? Cam Akers, you're saying is a risky
Cam
flex?
Cam Akers is, risky flex. And I think Dare is kind of like a deeper league option, like a 14 or 16-man league at flex. Ogunbowale, I don't know how to fucking say his name. One of us is right. Dare. Like sorry, we butchering names. I don't know. I don't know if I got it right or not. But I feel like Dameon Pierce is also a name that's coming back from injury, and he's the sexier name. Like, we know Dameon Pierce, but he's also coming back from injury in the same manner. So backfield by commitment
and he's a try-hard.
He's a try-hard, man. Oh my God. I don't know if I got to make a post about that, because I mean, the lightweight was true. Not lightweight.
It definitely was, for sure.
I called another player real quick on the Texans before we move off. I want to talk about him, Tank Dell. A lot of people had him this season, coming into the season, as like the wide receiver one, or like saw a big role from him. He's CJ Stroud's guy. We have not seen that yet from Tank Dell. I don't know that we will, with the obviously superstar emergence for Nico Collins, and then Stephon Diggs really carrying a nice number 2 role, 1B type role on this team for the Texans. What are you doing with Tank Dell right now? Because to me, he seems like a sell candidate based off of the name, and I'd be waiting, honestly, for like one big week out of Tank Dell and probably trying to ship him personally.
I'm gonna hold him. I mean, there's somebody I liked in the preseason. Still hold out hope, but like it's very clear, like Nico's the guy. Like Nico's a stud. But the one thing I'll say with Tank is that Tank was seeing targets. It just wasn't happening early in the season. And the other thing with Tank too is he's coming off of like a broken leg, right? Like
fractured fibula,
So
and got shot.
Yeah, so it's gonna take him a little bit, I'd imagine, to be 100. And maybe he's not this season. Who knows? But maybe later in the season he is. And the other thing I do want to mention, though, Stephon Diggs has been playing really well. Now, that'll be a take, but we've seen Stephon Diggs 2 years in a row now. End of the season, this dude falls off. Like, he's not as good as early on in the season. So I'm going to go with the young guy in Tank to finish the season stronger than.
We're not doing this, Tyler. We're not doing this right now, because otherwise we're going to have a whole different segment on this shit. That was different. Buffalo, we're playing with the weather. We're playing with Buffalo outside circumstances.
No, he's
just play indoors.
He falls off. He falls off.
He ain't gonna fall off. But I think Tank Dell for me is one of those names. He becomes like, he profiles to me as like a up and down wide receiver 3 flex. And I think that's the best case scenario for him. I don't really see a world where he takes over Stephon Diggs. He's been playing about 60% of the snaps, Diggs about 80% of the snaps. So for me, I'm like, they obviously value what in my opinion, they value what Diggs does a little bit more than what Dell does on a consistent basis. And it's like, you have to work Dell into the game plan a little bit more than Diggs. He kind of is part of it. 3 18-point game plus games for Stephon Diggs right now. So I think right now the pecking order, Nico, Diggs, Dell. We'll see how things shape up though over the second half there. I know you're a Tank Dell believer.
I'm buying.
What'd you pay for Tank Dell right now?
I mean, if people view him as a wide receiver 3, I'd buy him for wide receiver 3 numbers.
Oh, I'd sell it instantly for wide receiver 3 numbers.
I think he can still be a wide receiver 2.
Send me Tank Dell, and I'll send you Tank Dell. What you sending me back, bro? Give me a player. Give me a player you don't think's a wide receiver 3. Send him back to me. Who you got? Who you got on your squad? You send him back to me for Tank Dell.
I don't really know names off the top
Give me
of my
Michael
head.
Pittman. Give me Michael Pittman for Tank Dell.
I would do that. The only caveat is if Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback, I want Michael Pittman. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, bro, yeah, you can send me Michael Pittman for that. Let's talk about the Colts real quick though.